Excellent. Okay, well, welcome to the Expats Portugal webinar on the 4th of April, 2024. We've got some lovely messages coming in. Tom is saying, Hola from Ohio, T minus 4 days until my first adventure in Portugal. You're going to find this webinar very useful, Tom. And Debbie, greetings from Florida. 1 month and 1 day, not like you're counting, from getting on the ship that will take me to Europe. Arriving in style on a boat. Fantastic. Good evening to you, Stuart. And Diana, who sounds like she's already on first name terms with you, Filomena. A lady here tonight on the webinar learning about the Portuguese language and culture, a lady who I'm very happy to call my friend. Filomena, good evening to you. Lovely to have you here.
Olá, good evening.
I should have said that, shouldn't I? Olá, boa noite.
Boa noite.
Boa noite. How are you? Tudo bem?
Tudo bem, obrigada. E contigo?
Muito bem, obrigado, and all the better for seeing you, which I hope to be able to say in Portuguese by the end of the session tonight. So lovely to see you here. Behind you is your town. Maybe we could start there, a little bit of an introduction to you, for some people might not know about you. You are, to me, a national heroine of Portugal. An absolute celebrity here on Portuguese terra firma, and you live in central Portugal. There's Miranda de Corvo. Can you tell us a little bit about your town and yourself?
Yes, I live in Miranda do Corvo. I have always lived in Miranda do Corvo, although I have traveled, of course, but I've lived here all my life. And Miranda do Corvo is a small town. You can see the picture behind me is this town, and it's near Coimbra in central Portugal. The town, the municipality has about 12,000 inhabitants, so it's not very big. And I've been a teacher for 36 years now. And for the last 10 years, I've been also teaching foreigners. So I've been teaching Portuguese for foreigners. And I also organize trips when people ask me to know a particular part of Portugal, especially central Portugal. And I also do some translations, especially when people need certified translations for official documents, so I do lots and lots of things. I manage a lot of people. I can say that sometimes I am the manager, the solicitor, everything in one.
Your trips are legendary. The most recent one we were on together was to the schist villages in central Portugal, which was phenomenal. And we went to the Beirão factory. We might find out a little bit about Portuguese alcohol tonight, because we're looking at key phrases, tips, and etiquette. So Portuguese alcohol might come into that at some point. But what a wonderful trip! Thanks again, Filomena. It was superb going into. I mean, really, that's your own territory in many ways. We're looking up into the hills behind you. That's where the schist villages are. And when we were walking through a village there, an old man looked out of an upstairs window, didn't he? And you started talking to him, and he knew your father.
Yes.
It was a wonderful moment.
Yes. And like, for example, the owner of Licor Beirão also knew my father, and
Well, when you get here, do go on one of Filomena's trips. We'll give you all the details for getting in touch with Filomena for tuition. I think you've got a waiting list, but there is a little bit of an opening for people who might want a bit of one-to-one in the next couple of months. These slots rarely come up, but I think you've got a couple of vacancies at the moment, so we can talk about that later. But over to you then for a little bit of a presentation. And really, the language and the culture should be taken together, because the culture informs the language and vice versa, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. The language reflects the culture. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Over to you then.
Okay. So I can show you. Let me try to do this. I can show you a few sentences. So meeting and greeting people. This is what I've been asked to speak about. So to start with, of course, the first one is hola, right? So everyone knows that hola is the first greeting, hello. So Then you can say bom dia, boa tarde, or boa noite. So that is according to the part of the day. So speaking about the pronunciation, because pronunciation is essential for people to understand what you're saying. And so the first word, bon, it has an M at the end, and this M at the end is not to be pronounced as a M sound, as an M sound. It's just there to make the nasal sound of the O in this case. So the word is bon, bon dia. Okay, bon dia for good morning.
I'm not seeing many people's lips move. Are you?
You should practice. You should
Yeah,
practice.
come on, everybody. We can see you. So if you wouldn't mind, when Filomena's teaching some pronunciation, you go ahead and repeat after Filomena.
Yeah, bon dia.
Very good. Well done, everybody.
Then, if you want to say good afternoon, you say boa tarde, boa tarde. And good evening or good night, boa noite, boa noite. You might have noticed that the word bon is different from the other ones, boa, because bon is a masculine word and boa is a feminine word, because everything in Portuguese turns around being masculine or feminine and singular and plural. So the word dia, although it's an exception to the general rule, because in general, the words ending in A are feminine, but this is an exception to Portuguese. The Portuguese language is full of exceptions, and this is one of them. Dia is a masculine word, so you have to say bom dia, which means good day, literally. Bom dia. And then tarde and noite, afternoon and evening, are feminine words, so that's why you have to say good in the feminine form, boa. Boa tarde, boa noite.
Sorry to interrupt, but is it too controversial to ask when one becomes the other? Because I did hesitate when we were greeting each other. Yeah. There is a little bit of controversy around this, I think, Filomena, isn't there?
Yes, usually the transition between bom dia and boa tarde, because, and again, the language reflects the culture, and this is a good example. Bom dia, we say bom dia until we have lunch. And so boa tarde is after you have had your lunch. So, of course, it's a bit depending on each person if you have had your lunch or not. So sometimes you say bom dia, the other person says boa tarde. It doesn't matter. It means that the other person has already had his lunch, but you haven't. So that is the usual mark there, lunch. And then between boa tarde and boa noite is if it's dark or not. So when it's dark, you start saying boa noite. If it's not dark, you can just say boa tarde. So have I answered your question, Carl?
You did. Thank you very much for explaining that.
So, of course, in the summer, for example, you might start saying boa noite just at almost 10 o'clock in the evening, right? But in winter, you might say that at 5:30. Yes. Because it's dark.
Well, it's changed on the webinar. It was, it's dark last week. It's light this week. So hence my boa tarde to you. Yeah.
Then you can say tudo bem, which is a very informal way of asking, is everything okay? Everything okay? Tudo bem. You have another word with an M at the end, and this is an EM sound, so it's em, the last sound, em. So tudo bem, is everything well? And you can answer tudo bem, obrigado, if you are a man, or obrigada with an A if you are a woman. So you should say tudo bem, obrigado, or tudo bem, obrigada. Okay?
And it's the person saying it that where you make
yes,
not who you're saying it to, right?
It's not nothing to do with the person you speak to, but it's yourself. It's about yourself, because when you say obrigado, what you are saying is, I am thankful. I'm thankful to you. So the focus is on you, on yourself. So it's obrigado if you are a man, obrigada all the time if you are a woman. Although some people think, even the Portuguese, although some people think that it should be obrigado to a man and obrigada to a woman, but it's not.
Okay.
Then, if you want to go on the conversation, you could say e contigo, and with you, informal. So that is informal. And we say informal because in Portuguese we have two ways of addressing someone, either in the usual tu, the informal you, or você, or a senhora, o senhor, for more formal you. So in this case, I have informal and formal. So e contigo, with you, and with you, informal. E consigo, and with you, formal. Or you could also say e com vocês, and with you, both of you or all of you. So vocês is you in the plural. Okay, so the dialogue could be tudo bem, obrigada, e contigo. Okay, or e com vocês. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Then you could also say como estás or como está. So how are you? Como estás is informal. The verb with an S at the end, it always is the informal version of the verb. And then como está, without the S at the end, is how are you to someone that you don't know yet. So someone, or in a formal situation, you go to the city hall to take care of some paperwork or something. And so in a more formal situation, you can say como está, how are you?
I wanted to ask you about that, but where the formality applies, and you said, yeah, in a sort of bureaucratic institutional situation, you would apply a formality. And would that be age related, or if you're addressing a police officer?
Also,
Okay.
yes, also because again we go again to the culture, because we usually want to respect the elder people. Then we usually address an older person with some more formal, so with some more respect, we consider being formal. Okay. Then you can also have the plural in this one, como estão. So how are you? But you are speaking to, for example, a couple, and you want to know how are you both. So in the plural. So this has three. How are you? Como estás? Como está? Como estão?
Very good.
And again, the answer can be just bem, obrigado, well, thank you, bem, obrigado, or bem, obrigada. And you can ask e tu, and you, or e o senhor, or e a senhora. So you are saying and you, or and you sir, or and you madam. It's better, I advise you to use o senhor or a senhora instead of the word você. Although we have the word você, but lots of Portuguese consider that você is not respectful enough. And so if you say o senhor or a senhora, you are always sure that you are being polite. So my advice is, instead of saying você, if you use o senhor if you are speaking to a man, or a senhora if you are speaking to a lady, it's always better. It shows more respect. Okay.
Thank you.
Then you could say, of course, I'm also well, thank you. Também estou bem, obrigado. Or também estou bem, obrigada. We have the word também, and here we have two M's that are there to make the nasal sound of the vowel. So you have tan, and then bem. Também, also. Também. Também estou bem, obrigado. Then introducing yourself and others, you can say, of course, you can say o meu nome é, but usually the Portuguese expression is chamo-me, my name is. It's literally, I call myself, chamo-me. Or you could say, eu sou o, or eu sou a, I am, and then before your name, when you say I am, you should say o if you are a man before the names. For example, eu sou o Carl, or before the feminine name, you should say a. For example, I can say eu sou a Filomena. Then if you want to introduce your husband, for example, you can say este é o meu marido, and then say the name. So este é o meu marido, o Carl, for example, okay? Then if you want to introduce your wife, you can say esta é a minha esposa, or you could also say esta é a minha mulher, because although the word mulher might seem, well, it's not very nice because this is my woman, but it's actually very normal, let's say, very common to say esta é a minha mulher. But you could say esta é a minha esposa, and then the name of your wife. For example, your children, you can say estes são os meus filhos, etc. So these are my children, estes são os meus filhos. When you are introduced, you can say nice to meet you, and you should say muito prazer. Literally, it means a lot of pleasure. So muito prazer.
Very good. And a little pronunciation note in there, if you wouldn't mind, Filomena. Muito. It looks like muito, doesn't it? Somebody looking at that from an English perspective,
Yes.
muito, but you're bringing in the nasal N sound.
Yes, it's muito. It seems like an N. It seems that an N exists between the I and the T, right? It's muito. Yeah, but yes, it's the muito prazer.
Okay, and if can I bring your attention back a couple of lines there? Because there's like an extra formality in a sense, isn't there, compared to the English? So, este é o meu marido. You're basically saying this is my husband.
My husband, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So and I don't. That's an interesting way of putting it, but it's like it almost suggests more of a formality, doesn't it? My husband.
Yeah, because before the possessive, before saying my or your, or we always put the article as well. So we say o meu, a minha, and also because of the masculine and the feminine, even the word my changes, as you can see. O meu marido, my husband, a minha esposa, my wife. So even the word my has a masculine form and a feminine form.
And when you and I, if we were talking to each other, I might even say that to you in conversation, mightn't I? I might start a comment by saying, "Oh, Filomena," as in, actually, Filomena, beg your pardon.
No, if you are speaking to me, no.
Yeah.
If you are speaking to me, it's different. You don't say Filomena or Carl. I don't say that because you are speaking directly to me, no. But when you say, for example, imagine that you want to say Luís is at home, then you should start with Luís está em casa.
Okay.
Luís, yes. If you are speaking about someone else, yes.
Yes, very good. Thank you for clarifying that. And thanks for the questions that are starting to come in from Jose and Tom, which is great. I'll come back to those a little bit later on.
Yeah.
And we record the first part. And sorry, go ahead, Filomena.
Yeah, just to finish. So saying goodbye, you can say goodbye in a very, very Italian way. Ciao. We write it like that, but it's ciao. We use that quite a lot. Ciao, ciao. You could also use the same bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite as a farewell. So you are basically wishing, have a nice day, have a nice afternoon, have a nice evening. So you could use that as a farewell. Or you could say até já And some people, what I have noticed, speaking with English-speaking people, sometimes you say até já, thinking that it corresponds exactly to see you soon, but it's not. For example, you don't say até já if you want to say, well, see you maybe on Monday or soon, but in a few days. You just say até já if it's in a few minutes, in half an hour or so. So you say até já if you are meeting the same person in a few minutes. So it's like see you in a few minutes. Then you can say até logo. See you later. For example, if you are meeting the person later on the same day, até logo. You can say até amanhã, and sometimes people don't listen to the E and the A because they are two vowels, and sometimes people just say até amanhã, right? Até amanhã. But it's até amanhã, but quicker, it's até amanhã. See you tomorrow. Even if you don't mean tomorrow, but people say see you tomorrow, even if it's not tomorrow. And you could say, if you want to say see you soon, in that situation where I said see you soon, maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks, then you could say até breve, that is see you soon, até breve, or you can say see you next time, até à próxima, até à próxima. This X is the sound of an S, as if it was an S. Próxima, até à próxima. Okay?
Well done, everybody who's repeating after Filomena.
I don't know if I have time to. I don't know if I have time to explain saying please and thank you, but
definitely no, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So saying please and thank you. You can say por favor, ou faz favor, ou se faz favor. All of these are please. So you can say por favor, se faz favor, faz favor. Or you can say desculpe or desculpe. So what's the difference? When do you use one and the other? You can say por favor if you are, for example, sitting in a cafe and you want to ask something to the waiter and to call the waiter's attention, you can say por favor or desculpe. You can say both, either one or the other. Calling the attention, you can say por favor or se faz favor. Or you can say, oh, desculpe, look, excuse me. So you can say that in both situations. Or imagine that you want to ask some information in the street, because the Portuguese do speak a lot to each other. So we do ask lots of information in the street, even if you don't know the person. So you could start also with por favor or desculpe in that sense of excuse me. Then to say thank you, of course, you say obrigado, as we said before, or obrigada. Or if you want to say thank you very much, you say muito obrigado or muito obrigada. Also thinking of people who live in other parts of the country, like Peter, for example, in our show. You can also say bem-aja. So if you live in the area of Castelo Branco, Covilhã, Fundão, so near Serra da Estrela, it's very, very common to say thank you with bem-aja. So this bem-aja is like wishing you good, wishing you well, right? So bem-aja. Or you could be a bit more formal if you want to say agradeço imenso. So I thank you very much. I appreciate very much. So agradeço imenso. That is a bit more formal to say thank you. Excusing yourself. So again, you can say desculpe or com licença. So what's the difference? You just say com licença when you are asking for a permission for something. For example, you are in a supermarket, people are blocking your way and you want to pass, and you can say com licença. So may I have your permission to pass? Or you knock at the doctor's office, for example, and before opening the door, when you are opening the door, you can say com licença. So may I open the door? Do I have your permission to open the door? So that is always to ask permission. You don't say com licença, for example, in that situation where you are sitting at the cafe and you want to call the waiter. You are not asking any permission. So that you don't do. You can say desculpe, por favor, but com licença just when you ask for some permission. And it's, for example, on a phone call, it's usually before hanging up, it's usual to say com licença as a polite gesture of, excuse me, I'm hanging up on you. So before hanging up, we usually say com licença. Apologizing, again, you can say, and now here I'm going to see the difference between informal and formal. So you can say desculpa, which is to a friend of yours, someone you already know informally. Desculpe to someone you don't know very well in a more formal situation, or even you can have the plural, desculpem, if you are apologizing for two people or more. So imagine that you are late in a meeting and everybody else is waiting for you, and then you can say desculpem. So all of you, I apologize for being late. So this is also a possibility in the plural. A bit more formal, you can say peço desculpa, I ask for, let's say, your forgiveness, or peço imensa desculpa, I ask for a lot of forgiveness. And that's it. I think that's what I have. I try to be as quick as possible.
There's some really good basics and a really good start for people to literally get their mouths around the language there and understand, some cultural insight as well as linguistic insight. Great job, Ted. I saw you. Excellent work. And others this evening who are having a go. And we've got a couple of questions. So do get your questions into the chat. We are talking about etiquette as well and customs, anything to do with the language and the culture. So do please ask those questions. Expectations in social situations, definite no-nos in Portuguese culture. Although I think, Filomena, people in Portugal are very, what's the word, tolerant. I think it's in many ways quite hard to offend Portuguese people, but we don't want to go, we don't want to do it inadvertently or accidentally. So if there's anything you think we should know on that level, do let us know. But let's go to Jose Cruz. A very Portuguese name, of course. Is there a normal lunchtime in Portugal? That is a great question.
Yes.
So when are we making the shift from bon dia to boa tarde? When might that be?
Well, as I said, it depends if you had your lunch. But the usual lunchtime in Portugal goes between 12 and 2 o'clock, let's say. The usual time is 1 o'clock. By 1 o'clock is, for example, if you go to a restaurant, usually the restaurants start to fill up at 12:30. If you go at 12:30, 1 o'clock, sometimes it's hard to find a table. But if you go at 12, for example, it's easier to find a table. If you go at 2, it's probably too late.
Yeah, and that can be quite strict, can't it? Because then you'll be down to some patiscos or a tosta mista or torrada or something like that as a snack.
Yeah, and of course, it all depends on the restaurant, because there are in more touristic areas like the Algarve or Lisbon or big cities. Of course, you have restaurants that are open all the time, but not in small towns like mine.
Like Miranda, okay. And lunch, then some might think is quite early, starting at 12:30, and of course dinner for some foreigners can seem quite late. What would you say is a normal dinner time in Portugal?
Yes, normal dinner time is usually between 8 o'clock, 9, sometimes even later, but usually 7:30. For example, if you want to go to a restaurant to have dinner, they don't usually serve before 7, that's for sure. Before 7, you can find a restaurant that is a traditional kind of restaurant that serves before 7. But at 7:30, okay, you can go in. It's 7:30. You can ask, and maybe by 8 o'clock you will be served. That's the usual. Yeah, amazing. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
And foreigners are thinking, I'm in bed by the time Portuguese are having their dinner. How do they do that? And it must be the siesta. Now, no, that's Spanish, not Portuguese.
That's Spanish.
Yes.
The Portuguese don't have siesta, but we do have, usually for the traditional commerce, for the traditional shops, we do have 2 hours for lunch.
Yeah.
So but we don't sleep. We just eat we like to eat and speak and talk to our friends and family and being with our friends. And it takes a long time for us to do that. So it's between 1 and 3 o'clock. So between 1 and 3 o'clock, the traditional shops are closed because it's lunchtime.
I love the Portuguese 2 hour lunch. And I was talking to a gentleman at a car dealership, and he was complaining that he'd had a very short lunch of only 50 minutes. Now, and in some of the cultures people are coming from this evening, it's a sandwich at your
Yeah.
al desco, I think it's called, isn't it? Where you have a sandwich at your desk in 10 or 15 minutes. So it's a lovely thing. People take
That doesn't happen. No, that doesn't happen. A sandwich for lunch? No.
It's against the law, I think, actually.
Almost against the law, yes.
Yeah, right, right. Okay, Tom is asking, I hope that helps, Jose Cruz. And I've heard, says Tom, that Brazilian Portuguese is becoming more common in Portugal thanks to YouTube and similar social media accounts. And of course, some of the apps are Brazilian Portuguese. Do you see that happening, Filomena? Asked Tom. For example, the gerund in European Portuguese is estar a infinitive, while in Brazilian Portuguese, the gerund, I don't know what that is even.
The gerund is the ing form of the verb, like you say, drinking, going, etc.
Okay.
The ing form of the verb. But
Informal.
actually, in Brazilian Portuguese, the gerund is estando,
Okay.
not estar, estando.
All right.
Yes, it is a fact that also because we are getting a lot of Brazilian immigrants, lots and lots are coming from Brazil to live in Portugal. So, of course, it's natural that the society is getting that influence as well, and the language gets that influence as well. About the apps, well, it doesn't influence, I think, because the Portuguese don't use those apps, right? So it's not the Portuguese that are going to use those apps. But as I said, yes, you can notice that because there are lots of Brazilians. Even, for example, at school, we noticed that at school that little children, they start to speak a little bit more like the Brazilian way because their colleagues that are Brazilian. So they get that influence as well.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Do you approve of the apps? Do you think that's a useful thing to augment your language tuition with?
Well, I don't, of course, I don't know the apps very well because I don't use those apps. But what I think is that sometimes when you learn Brazilian Portuguese, then it's harder for you to understand what the Portuguese say and make yourself understood as well. But basically to understand what the Portuguese say, because it's so different in the pronunciation, it's a huge difference. And so apart from the structure that, as Tom Smith is saying, the gerund, for example, if you want to say in European Portuguese, if you want to say I'm drinking, you say eu estou a beber. Eu estou a beber. But in Brazil, you would say eu estou bebendo. I'll try to be my best Brazilian pronunciation. Eu estou bebendo. So, as you can see, the structure estou a beber and estou bebendo is completely different, right? There are also vocabulary that are very different, like a train, they say trem, and we say comboio. Like a dog, they say cachorro, we say cão. So lots and lots of vocabulary that we say in a different way.
Very good. Okay, there you go, Tom. Great question from Gail. At what age are you considered elderly? And I'm guessing that's coming down to how to address people politely and respectfully.
Yes. Well, again, this is, it depends. Of course, if you speak to someone that is 80 years old, that's There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, if he or she is 8 years old, so deserves some more respect. But this is a bit also, it changes a little bit, depends on, it's very personal. I mean, I have people to whom I say tu, even though they are older than me, and there are other people that I would not dare saying to as a way of respect. So it's a bit hard to explain, because it also depends on the relationship and the way you feel about the people. If you feel more connected, let's say, if you have a stronger connection to that person, or if on the other hand it's a bit more distant,
Yes.
so
You've got to make a judgment call, but fortunately, you've taught us how to apologise tonight as well, so that could be quite. Don't
Yes,
worry,
but
Mike.
as a foreigner, even if you say the scoop to someone that should be more formal, of course, I mean, they are going to they understand that you are a foreigner. You don't know the difference between the scoop and the scoop, so they are not offended by that.
Excellent. Oh, that's so good to know. All right, thank you for that question, Gail. Philip, hola de San Francisco. Muito bom, Filomena. Good to see you here tonight. We are going to relocate to the area between Porto and Lisboa this time next year. From beginners, to what level of language skill do we need to aim? That's an interesting question, isn't it, from Stuart? You need the A2, of course, don't you, to become a citizen of Portugal. But what would you say? I mean, people pacing themselves and everyday sort of Portuguese. What sort of level would you recommend to Stuart there, Filomena?
Yes, of course, the level A2, as you said, is the basic level for everyday life situations, right? So you can, for example, order a meal, or you can complain about something, or you can there is also a lot. So the A2 level is, as I said, everyday life situation, and that is, let's say, the minimum to learn. But and you can just learn the A2. It's, as I said, it's enough for you to use in everyday life, to go to a restaurant, to ask for a coffee, to have a drink, or to go to a
Survival
supermarket.
skills, basically. Yeah, excellent. Okay,
So
that's for you,
that's the
Stuart.
A2.
Wonderful. A2. What's A1 then? Is that really rudimentary?
The A1, yes, on the A1, it is very, you just know the present tense, and it's very, very limited. I think it's a bit too limited. You should have the A2, which gives you a broader view on the past tenses as well, and a little bit more of vocabulary, of
All
course.
right. Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. La Ronda is delighted that dinner is so late. I don't even start cooking until 9 or 10, so you'll fit in perfectly here.
Yeah.
La Ronda. Dream Team session coming up at 9. The link is there if you need that. A sigh of relief, or a relief, a palpable relief from Mike T there. It's not 60. You're not, no way are you elderly at 60 here in Portugal. How should we find someone to teach us Portuguese with so many instructors available? That's a good question from Laurie and Winton there, because people have different styles of learning, don't they? Is that what you would recommend? Is pick the teacher that inspires you? And
Yes, of course. You should choose a way that you feel confident with, and especially don't be afraid of trying, because sometimes people are afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid, because it's natural. Everybody makes mistakes, and people know that you are not Portuguese, so they are not expecting you to speak perfectly Portuguese. So the only way to learn is practicing. So you have to listen. Listening is a very, very essential skill. I think that you should listen to a lot of Portuguese. The more, the better. And then, of course, trying to repeat, trying to say small sentences, and going on. Trying to find some Portuguese friends is also good. For example, in the area where you live, if you live in Portugal already, if you have some clubs around you that you can join and see, for example, volunteering work or something, and you can meet other people and start talking.
Yeah, you make a good point there, of course, about trying and different nationalities around the world. I won't name names, but some nationalities aren't very keen when you don't speak their language very well, especially in France. But here in Portugal, it goes down very well, I think, doesn't it? To have a go, to make an effort.
Yes.
And Portuguese people are very, I don't know, it goes a long way. You can earn a lot of social credit, I think, by attempting to speak Portuguese, and yeah, and it helps build your confidence, I think.
Yes, of course, in some situations, like at the supermarket, for example, a big supermarket, sometimes if you go to the cashier, right, and they don't have time to speak to you, so don't expect them to be very patient because they have to hurry up, right? So in that situation, it's probably not the best to start speaking, but in a more relaxed way, in your local cafe, for example, and trying to, I don't know, buying a magazine or something.
Yeah.
When people have some more time, because usually Portuguese are, very slow paced. So you can try to, as I said, try to integrate something locally. I'm sure that you have something near you where you can go to, you can attend even some, as I said, some painting lessons or whatever you are interested in.
Yes, excellent. And the TV, we're so lucky, aren't we, at the moment? Even if you don't live in Portugal, you can tune into Portuguese radio, watch Portuguese TV from afar, watch YouTube videos that are in Portuguese. So you can immerse yourself and hear the language being spoken as you recommend there, Filomena. So perhaps we should pause the recording there. We'll be sticking around, of course, to answer people's individual questions. There might be some funny wrong word choices. An example here that we might talk about some more when we finish the recording. This is Denise saying, just don't say corar instead of chuva.
Chorar
Chorar,
instead of
chorar, beg your
chover.
pardon. I found myself raining instead of crying in a movie. Or maybe it's just really sad. And Laronda, also delighted that 60 is not elderly here. And Peda Benoit de Peixe de Gales, Wales, of course, in Portuguese. Typing with my left hand tonight. Awkward to greet you all or ask questions. Oh, it sounds like you got injured there, Peda. Well, as melhoras,
As
we say.
melhoras, that's right. As
Yes.
melhoras.
Get well soon there, Peda. Any more last words then for the recording, Filomena, of words of encouragement for people when it comes to learning Portuguese and engaging in the culture?
Don't give up, because you have you have to be patient, okay?
Right.
Because some people think, oh, I will learn this language in 6 months. In 6 months, I'll be fluent. And then you realize that, well, it's a bit harder than that. So Portuguese is a hard language. I'm not lying to you. So it is a hard language to learn, even to the Portuguese. And so it's hard. So give it a break and don't be too harsh on yourself.
How lovely. All right. Thank you so much for being here. We'll pause the recording there and we'll go to some hands up questions off air.